Welcome back, everybody. I'm Austin, your host here at Fonseca Fantasy Files, and today I'm going to be telling you guys about all the Dynasty sells that you need for your Dynasty rosters this season. So, let's get started with the quarterbacks. And at first, we have Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, considered just about QB8 on the market right now. Overall Dynasty value, he's about a top 20 pick, so it'll be a round 2 pick in your Dynasty startup. So, for why he's a sell, he was only QB 12 in overall points per game and quarterback 15 overall, about 18 points per game. Uh, so his stats this year, he only had 3,870 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. So, not great production from what you want, especially as someone who's ranked this high as your QB8. You're gonna want him to be putting up real elite QB1 numbers. So another reason we just don't like him right now is, the Greg Roman offense is a concern. Last year Herbert only threw the ball 504 times, and that is one of not very good for his passing. So Greg Roman has a history of being a bottom 5 offense in pass attempts, so that definitely limits his ceiling and his floor for fantasy football. So, I think with Justin Herbert, he's a safe asset. He's good to have on your team, but I think that now would be a great time to, tear down, maybe get Herbert for, maybe a Baker Mayfield and another asset there, or, down tiering to anybody below him. Some of my favorite buys, if you go to my buy video, we'll have some QBs there for you. But, I think he's just a great down tier right now, so I don't really see the upside in having him on your team right now. I mean, he's QB8. I think that's very much an overvalue of what he's actually going to do for your fantasy football teams, not what he's going to do in real life. So that's why we're selling Justin Herbert right now. Next up, we got Jared Goff. Right now, he is the QB 21, and overall about player 77 off the board. So that'll be about I believe 6th, 7th round pick for your dynasty team. So why we're selling Jared Goff. So I think last year we saw Jared Goff's peak, essentially. He had a great system around him. He had all his weapons. He had Ben Johnson. But now, a lot of that's gone. Frank Ragnow has retired, and they lost Kevin Zeitler, and they're replacing that with 2 rookies on the offensive line. And the loss of Ben Johnson, I think, is going to prove a lot more hurtful than people might think. So, he's QB 21 right now. He's about a low end QB 2. But I think that, if you're a contending team, he's fine. But, if you're a rebuilder, I think you definitely want to get off him sooner than later. I don't think he's going to put up anywhere near close to what he did last year. I mean, last year he was the QB6, throwing for 37 touchdowns and almost 4,700 yards. So his success was very much tied to a lot of passing volume. And, if the Lions aren't as good as they were last year, at least I don't expect their offense to be with all their key losses this year and not many additions. I know they added Isaac Tesla in the 3rd round to be another receiver, but he kind of fits the same player profile as Jameson Williams. So, I don't think that his upside is what it would be compared to last year. So that's why we have him as a sell right now. Now, on to our last QB, we have Justin Fields. Right now, he's about QB 24. Overall player about number 95 on KeepTradeCut. So, Justin Fields, I feel like he's loved. Everybody loves Justin Fields. Everybody thinks he's great, but he is definitely one of the least safe assets you can have in Dynasty right now. He would be a great as a QB3, but having him ranked as a QB2 right now, I think is just foolish because this is on his 3rd team in 3 years, and he hasn't proven that he's an actual good NFL quarterback. He's known for his rushing upside, but he's not a really great passer, so that can definitely limit his production week by week in fantasy football. And if someone's ranked below like the QB 20, I think people will be a lot more skeptic about him. So, and I definitely am. Now with his offensive situation, I mean it's really just Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, and then maybe Mason Taylor breaks out to be a good number 2 option, but other than that, Josh Reynolds is going to be his wide receiver 2 right now, and I'm not too high on that. The offensive line is good, but I'm also not too confident in their play calling. I mean, we saw last year they went through an array of different coordinators, so we'll just have to see how that plays out. And he's not always that great of a QB, like an actual NFL QB. So it's very up in the air to whether he's going to have a job. A year from now, 2 years from now, maybe even a year from now, he could get replaced if the Jets are really terrible. So definitely get off of him while you can, and he still has value because I think he can very much go to being just basically a roster clogger on your Dynasty Fantasy Football teams at this point. So next up on our list, we're gonna start with the running backs, and now we have James Cook. James Cook right now is about the RB17 in Dynasty Fantasy Football, about overall player number 66. So he'll be about a fifth to sixth round pick, depending on your league format and perception. So we can't lie, James Cook had a great year last year. I mean, he scored 18 touchdowns overall, 16 on the ground, a thousand rushing yards on only 207 attempts. So that gave him about a 4.9 yards per carry, which is a very elite performance. He probably won you a lot of leagues last year based on where he's getting drafted. RB17, it's an all right rating. I mean, we're seeing him now holding out, and he's back at OTAs and everything, but he's not practicing or anything right now, so that definitely causes raise for concern. And his long-term outlook in Buffalo is not promised. And if he had another contract, I'd definitely be a lot higher on him. But this holdout, I'm not a fan of players who hold out this early in the season. And we've seen with Le'Veon Bell and among other running backs who have held out. It hasn't worked out for their favor in that upcoming fantasy season. So it's kind of a reason why we're out on him. And I don't think anybody was really going to expect him to score 18 touchdowns next year. He'll probably still be very viable. He'll be a good RB2, but I don't expect him to be a top 8 running back in fantasy football again. And another reason we're selling him is just because he's not the main running back in this offense. I mean, if we look at his snap percentages, after week 11, he only had one game above 50% snap share, and that was against the Ravens in the divisional round. So even in the regular season, he wasn't getting as much snap usage as we would like him to see, especially from somebody like James Cook, where he has the talent, but Buffalo just refuses to not make him a workhorse guy, and he also is not really a workhorse guy. So that's kind of why I'm in on cashing out on his value now. Working on a down tier. If you can get somebody with similar production, you trade down and get maybe an Aaron Jones and a first round pick. I think that'd be a great move for some of your dynasty fantasy football teams. So on to the next running back we have here, Isaiah Pacheco. So Isaiah Pacheco is definitely, I feel like one of the most loved guys in the NFL. I mean, if you know anything about Pacheco, he's a great story, and everything that he's went through to get to this point, it's really just inspirational. So with Pacheco, he's right now the RB28 on KeepTradeCut, about overall 126. And with Pacheco, he's only had one elite fantasy season, and some wouldn't even really call it elite. He was the RB15 2 years ago in 2023. And then other than that, he was RB37 the year before that, and then last year he got injured. So it's very tough to make a case for Pacheco to be a buy right now, especially with them bringing back Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt's definitely a much better pass catcher than them, and also the addition of Brashard Smith. I think that's kind of an under the radar pickup by them. He was a converted wide receiver into a running back, so I definitely think that he can steal some touches that would have originally gone to Pacheco. Kind of taking over that Jerick McKinnon role that we saw them use when they went back-to-back Super Bowls. So him being in a committee and probably only being the first and second down back, and his injury risk, coming off a broken tibia or fibia, I believe, one of the two. But that makes it very concerning. And he was only a seventh round pick, so they don't have a lot invested into him. And after this year, he's a free agent. So once he hits free agency, I don't really picture any team going out and giving him a crazy contract unless he has a crazy good year, and I look like an idiot telling you guys to sell him. So that's why I'm out on Pacheco. The committee, the injury risk. I think there's just a lot safer options here around this range, and there's also a lot better production you can get. Aaron Jones is in around this tier, and I think he's gonna have a great year. There's no reason why he couldn't. The Vikings extended him, so definitely try and down tier from Pacheco and try and move on to somebody who could give you a little more production, regardless of their age. If you're just looking for production right now. Next up, this is probably gonna piss a lot of people off, but Cam Scatterbo. I mean, he's the RB32, overall player 103, and I just don't get it why. Scatterbo, he was loved at ASU. I mean, he was carrying them, but he doesn't have elite speed or burst or receiving ability. And Tyrone Tracy is definitely gonna take over the third down role in this offense. I mean, he was a wide receiver playing running back, and he looked great last year. So there's no reason why Scadabo's going to take over on third down. And you know, even on like a every down basis, I mean, I just don't really think he's that good. I mean, it's a lot easier to run over guys when in college when they're a lot lighter, and you're just a big fullback playing running back almost to me at this point. So not really seeing the potential at the NFL level for Scadabo. I mean, he doesn't have the speed. Like I said, it's a lot easier to run over people in college than NFL linebackers and safeties. So I don't really see why he's going this high. I would definitely try and move off of him. Go find a Giants fan in your league and sell him for really whatever you can. You can probably get him to overpay a little bit because everybody loves this guy, and I'm just not seeing the hype why. So that's why we're out on Scadabo. Next up to the wide receivers. First up, we got Xavier Worthy's wide receiver 24, overall 76. And I just don't see why Xavier Worthy is a top 24 guy right now. I know he has a draft capital and I know he has the upside, but if he was really going to show something, he would have done it last year. And he didn't really do much until those garbage time touchdowns against the Eagles, and then I mean in the Buffalo playoff game he was good, but at the end of the year it was all manufactured touches and he wasn't really getting open on off script stuff. So when Rashee Rice comes back, I think Rashee Rice is going to definitely dominate a lot of the middle of the field stuff, and that's really going to limit Worthy's targets and his abilities to have a higher ceiling. So there's also a lot of crowded other receivers in this KC room. We got Rashee Rice, we got Hollywood Brown, who's a similar profile to Worthy, and Travis Kelce's still there. So the crowded wide receiver room, and he's coming off a great, memorable Super Bowl moments. So I think this is really a great sell high moment, and I really can't project him being anywhere in this range or higher come this time next year. So I definitely think now is the best time to get out before it comes to burn you. Next up, we got Zay Flowers. Now Zay Flowers, I was never high on. I've never been really high on any Ravens receiver. We've seen Lamar Jackson never produce a wide receiver one before, and with Zay Flowers, he's never produced as an elite guy. On his per game basis, he's very inconsistent. And last year he was only averaging 12.3 points per game. So to me, if you're gonna be a wide receiver 25, a bottom tier wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3, you gotta be averaging more than 12 points per game. I mean, that's just kind of ridiculous. So I mean, he does have a good ceiling with Lamar. He is the best wide receiver in that room, but we've seen them just completely go away from Zay Flowers when it comes to the playoffs and when it actually starts to matter. So definitely get off him before his volume plateaus or falls. And once he's coming into after this year, he's gonna be in a contract year. So I mean, we'll see how he does, but he's never really produced as a real guy you want to build a wide receiver room around. Now next up we got George Pickens. Now this one's probably gonna be unpopular, but these Steelers receivers that leave after they're done in Pittsburgh, they always just fall off. So they always fall off the face of the earth. I mean, Martavis Bryant, Juju. I mean, he won a Super Bowl, but was he really fantasy relevant? Not at all. Antonio Brown wasn't really it. Deontay Johnson, that's our most recent example, is Deontay Johnson. I mean, Deontay Johnson's been on a million different teams since then. So all these guys that have attitude problems, I think Mike Tomlin does a really great job of suppressing that and getting the most out of them. So I think it's just not going to mesh well when he's in Dallas. I mean, he's going to want the ball, and who knows if Brian Schottenheimer is able to control that locker room with him. So, at wide receiver 29, he's very much a boomer bust type of player. We've seen that in Pittsburgh. His contested catch ability is really strong. That's what people most know him for, but he's now the second option, and he's not going to get a ton of those opportunities, I don't think. And if he starts off the season strong and he doesn't have a good year this year and he goes to free agency, I really think his value is just going to go straight to the bottom, and you're not going to be able to get anything for him. So definitely get off of him now. Try and get a better win now piece. Maybe get some draft capital. I'm honestly taking whatever I can to get off of George Pickens if I'm not a contender this year. Unless you are a contender, and then, like I said, get off of him for a different guy, down tier. Try and get, honestly, any good veteran. Try and get Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, anybody like that. I'm really out on George Pickens this year. Lastly, on to the tight ends. So, we got TJ Hockenson, tight end 7, but overall 84. So, at tight end 7 right now, I think he's definitely a little bit overvalued. He's the third option in this passing offense, which could be good. It also could not be bad. It also could be bad, but I think it will be good. And with TJ Hockenson, he just hasn't really shown that ability to be an elite, worth of this range right now. I think you can down tier to somebody else and get similar production. I mean, last year he only averaged 8.6 points per game coming off the ACL tear. And that's another thing that kind of scares me, is that, coming off the ACL tear, he's definitely been injury prone throughout his career. And I just don't think he's going to see the volume that we're accustomed to seeing him getting while he was in Minnesota, getting 129, 127 targets in those first 2 years. I think that's definitely going to go down a lot, especially with Jefferson and Addison, with along with some other good pass catchers out of the backfield. So I definitely try and down tier off Hockenson, try and get me, you can target a rookie and get some more draft capital. But I also think there's other great veteran tight ends that you can get that'll give you similar production for a lot cheaper of a cost than TJ Hockenson. And that'll bring us on to our last player, which will be Brenton Strange. Brenton Strange, tight end 20. He's definitely one of the later guys, but when Evan Ingram got hurt last year, he was starting a lot of the snaps, 74% just about. And while he was starting, he only posted about 4 receptions a game for 34 yards. I mean, he wasn't consistent. I mean, he had that one great game, 11 receptions for 73 yards, but he also had weeks where he was just giving you nothing. Now, that could be attributed to, Mac Jones having to play QB and, injured T-Law still getting the reps, but I think there's just too much hype around him for what he's shown us. He has a great profile to, be a good tight end, but behind BTJ, behind Travis Hunter, behind the great pass catchers out of this Jaguars backfield, I definitely think that, there's other options that you can get for Brenton Strange. And, if you go back to my buys video, I think if you could just go get Hunter Henry and, you know, get something else with Hunter Henry for like a Brenton Strange and get a lot better production than what you would get with Strange. So that's why we're out on him this year. And, there's just not much upside to him. He's going to be at best the third option, which I don't even expect him to be that because, this Liam Cohen offense, it does make tight ends viable. I mean, we saw K. Dotton be good last year, but we really saw those receivers dominate, and I'm expecting bigger things out of BTJ, Diami Brown, Travis Hunter, among the other guys I got there. So, that'll be it for today, guys. These are my Dynasty sells. Leave a like, comment, subscribe below. Let me know what you guys want to see next. And soon coming up, we're going to have some redraft stuff going on. We're going to have some mock drafts. So if you guys want to get into some of those with me, let me know. And have a good weekend, guys. Take it easy. God bless. Peace.